Good morning, everyone. Here we are in another installment of the Voices of the Festival. I hope you're doing very well. Um, it's a little early for me. I'm in San Francisco, California, and here it's 7 a.m. Yay! Exactly. So here's Michael, and I'm going to invite him to join us. Michael. Here we go. And here we are. Hopefully he'll join us very soon. Yeah, there he is. Excellent.
Good morning.
How you doing then? Okay.
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Where are you now?
I am in my apartment in New York City.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah.
It's,
And you're in LA, is that right?
No, I'm in San Francisco.
Oh, San Francisco.
San Francisco.
Very different. Very
Right,
different.
so it's beautiful. I'm in this beautiful space.
Not too shabby.
I know, right? So it's very nice. So here I'm here with Merola and doing
right, yeah.
an old Spanish singing program with the Merolini and the orchestra. So it's
Fun.
quite nice. So
Yeah. Sounds great. Wish I was there.
I know. You should come and visit. So
Yeah.
and what are you doing in New York these days?
Let's see. I'm about to leave. This summer is pretty busy. So next week I actually head down to St. Petersburg, Florida. We're doing Martin Hennessy and Stephen Katsakis' show that they wrote for me called The Pleasing Recollection, which is like a one-man cabaret opera. This will be our fourth time performing it. So I'm just kind of trying to enjoy Pride, New York
great.
Pride, even though I won't be here for the actual Pride events. But St. Petersburg is hosting us as part of their official Pride celebration. So it'll be a lot of fun. Yeah.
Actually, Pride here is next Sunday, I think.
Oh, great.
And here's the big Pride parade in San Francisco. So I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, it's epic out there.
Yeah. So it should be fun. I think it's even that like a couple of days. They start on Friday and finish on Sunday. So,
Awesome.
so that should be very good. And since we're talking, what is that show? Tell us more about that show.
Yeah, it's a show that's based on Stephen Katsakis' life. He was a young man in New York City in the late 70s, early 80s, and trying to find his way. And he was a pianist, still is, but does more writing these days. And he was, meeting all of these prominent gay celebrities around town. So he meets Leonard Bernstein, he meets Aaron Copland, he meets Larry Kurt in a recording session. And, he has flirtations with them. He has awkward situations with them. He has love affairs with them. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. And inevitably, he's looking for his own success, his own way in the world. And he finds that. And he also finds true love. So it's a special show.
Good. And what did he write the music for himself?
So Martin Hennessy wrote the score.
Okay.
Yeah, Martin's awesome. He's taken all of these influences from the people he meets. So you hear a lot of Bernstein and a lot of Copland, and it's just all sort of meshed together into this really fun, just song to song, very cabaret style.
And exactly, I was going to say why it's a cabaret. Is that because of the fact that you go from song to song? I mean, I assume also the quality, the kind of songs that you're doing, right?
Yeah, it is. It was a choice that they made because Stephen played cabaret and sort of musical theater songs during that time, and he was actually one of the pianists at the very famous Marie's Crisis in New York, right back in its earlier days. So yeah, it sort of is fitting to what Stephen was up to those days, which is fun.
Oh, good, excellent. Well, that sounds fun. And I know that do you have something between that and and your show with Savannah, or then you go to Savannah there?
Yeah, actually, no, I'll be in France for 3 weeks. I just bought my ticket. It's
Good.
expensive these days. Um,
Yes.
and I'll be out there with pianist Bénédicte Jourdois,
Yeah.
and yeah, you know Bene, right?
But yeah, yeah, very much so. Yeah, from Julia.
And yeah, of course, yeah. And Blythe Gassert will be out there as well. And we were out there last summer too, and we were essentially doing some groundwork to start a music festival in the town that Benedict's family has been summering in forever. They have a house in the Brittany coast, which is on the Atlantic, sort of the northwestern corner of France. And yeah, we're trying to get something going out there, potentially also a training program. So we've been sort of going out there and doing some concerts and drumming up interests and seeing what we can come up with.
Fine. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Do you remember the name of the town?
It's called Carnac.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's not far from Belle-Île. That's sort of like the landmark that's over there, the
Good.
more famous place.
All right. Good. Okay. Yeah. Beautiful. So, uh, that's fun, and we'll say hello to Benedict.
I
When I
will, I
see her.
will. Yeah.
That's
You know, she just had a baby, so she's,
second.
deep in
Sec-
it.
yeah. 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 Wow. Second baby. So that's really great. And then you come back to Savannah.
That I
to
do.
to do Brigadoon for us. And
Brigadoon.
this is not your first time in Savannah, right? So
Yeah.
tell us what's your history with the city?
Well, I've only been there once before, and that was for the American Traditions competition,
Right.
which I'm sure many of your patrons and people that are watching right now probably know a lot about. I had a lot of fun there. It was 2019, literally weeks before shutdown. Sorry, yeah, it's 2020. Sorry, not
Okay.
2019.
Yeah.
2020. Yeah, just I think it was 3 weeks before everything got shut down. So it was the last thing I did.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
I mean that went well. And
yeah, it did go well.
so what did you get in the competition?
I won the Cheryl Milnes prize. So
Excellent. Did
for obvious reasons, right? Heroes.
right, exactly. Sorry, I don't know why it's stopping. There you go. Did you meet Cheryl then, or not yet?
I didn't meet him during that time. I don't think he was in town actually, but I've met Cheryl many times in the past, just at various events and here in New York and elsewhere. I forget exactly where, but I've definitely met him a few times in New York, and we got to chat a little bit over Zoom after I won. I remember during the pandemic, we got to see each other.
Good. Yeah, I mean, I remember the first time I met him. I felt like I was meeting, someone very intimidated like Scarpia or Iago, but as we know, he's extremely friendly and engaging. So it's just like it's a bit of a. I mean, we are always afraid of him at first. It's just like
Right.
it feels like
Yeah, he's a good actor.
it feels like it's going to be like Iago, Scarpia, someone like scary, but he's very
Yeah,
very
he's
friendly,
just a
very
big teddy
engaging.
bear. Right?
Exactly. Good. And so in the ATC you get to do all kind of repertoire, right? Not
Yeah,
just classical or musical theater or song.
yeah, exactly. You you're having to pick and choose things that are right for your voice, but you're also wanting to stay within the parameters of what the competition is asking you to do. So it was a bit of a so I was able to find a lot of really fun rep that I've always wanted to do, but really never had the opportunity to explore because I had been focusing so much on opera up until that point. But it was a really fun experience, and I won the opera prize, which is wonderful, but um, yeah, it definitely stretched me as an artist to participate, and I got to meet singers from a lot of different backgrounds and experiences, which also really heightened my personal experience of being there.
Do you traditionally do more opera?
I do. I sort of do a mix. I mean, I've had sort of a non-traditional trajectory in my career. I started very much in opera, and that kind of led me into the early opera, Baroque opera world. I was working a lot with that, and then I was doing tons of concert work. So, singing with symphonies, masses and requiems and all of that business. I think I did something like 15 Carmina Buranas in those earlier days. Um, and then, I started getting into a lot of new opera during that time as well, which kind of led me to realize that I had a lot of skill to use my voice in different ways, and I could change styles very quickly. And I had done some musical theater along the way. In my training, I did a production of The Fantastics in undergrad, and I did Tobias in Sweeney Todd in undergrad. And then, yeah, I also did a production of Sondheim's Passion at the Châtelet in Paris. I've done Kiss Me Kate, actually, at St. Petersburg with St. Petersburg Opera, which is where I'll be again next week with the Pleasing Recollection. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey, and I sing lots of song and art song repertoire. That's sort of been a huge part of my life. Um, Here in New York and elsewhere, I was always sort of finding myself in the recital world. And I've run a couple different organizations that present art song recitals. So yeah, it's a big piece of who I am.
Right. So in fact, we first met in one of those related to one of those events because you came to
Yeah,
rehearse with Howard to
yeah,
our apartment. So that's how I first met you, and you were
yeah,
doing a new piece. I believe it was a commission, right? So it's a brand new world premiere, and tell us more about your work with new composers, and also because you're doing two things now. You're doing the one in St. Petersburg, but the recital series that we met. But also tell us more about these festivals that these organizations that are song oriented that you run.
sure. Yeah. So back in 2010, I built with a number of colleagues and friends an organization called Song Fusion, which was, it was the early days of my career. I had just moved back to New York, and I kept thinking, well, it would be a good idea if I stayed creative. It would be a good idea if I stayed active and gave myself and my friends and our friends a platform to be seen and heard. It's a hard thing in New York when you're young and you're just trying to, make it. Um, you go to an audition and people are like, well, who are you? What do you do? And why are you here? you know,
Right.
um, you haven't cut your teeth yet. So we built this thing, which was a lot of fun, a lot of work. I learned so much in presenting and building recital programs, and all of the legwork and the admin that goes into that. It was a big learning curve for all of us, but I'm so glad I did it because I've used it in my career quite a lot. But essentially, that was an organization that was meant to collaborate with artists working in other mediums. So we would ask them, what they wanted to create, and then we would find repertoire that made sense with their ideas. So we would collaborate based off of their creative vision and bring our own to the table. And our hope was that we would support the art song world with that effort by bringing in an audience that may not experience art song, but they would come as a result of wanting to see, uh, you know, the artists that they are a fan of. So, sort of cross pollinating.
And was it a new song or it was all kind of repertoire?
It was all sorts. Yeah, we did Schubert and Brahms and Fauré, and then we would do new compositions. We gave a number of world premieres. We commissioned a couple of song cycles, um, and we found whatever repertoire made sense with what the artist was trying to build. So that could run the gamut. In a single program, we could have a world premiere, and then An die Ferne Geliebte, you know.
Right.
So it ran the gamut.
How do you go by? Just tell it to our crowd. How do you go by to commission a song cycle?
Oh yeah, that's a complicated question right there. Very loaded. Finding money for the arts is always a challenge, as I'm sure you know all too
I know.
well.
Yeah.
Um, but we had built an audience at that point. We didn't do it in our first or second season because we just didn't have the power or the structure to be able to do that yet. But once we had established that and we had some fans, we told our patrons, we told the sort of members of our artistic board. We were the members of our board at that point. We didn't build an external board, um, so it was completely artist run. But we told our people that we wanted to do this, and we were able to raise the money for it. We had an idea of what we wanted to do. We had Pride actually was coming up the first time we commissioned, and we wanted to commission a queer composer to write about the queer experience. So we ended up getting Ben Moore, if you know Ben's music,
Hmm.
um, and he and I actually worked on that together, and he included a poem that I wrote about coming out to my brother in a larger set that's called Love Remained, which is very beautiful, and it includes Harvey Milk's Hope speech, a sort of truncated version of that, and um, two settings of the It Gets Better project, two videos from that project. We took those and we also truncated them and turned them into songs. So it was a really special experience to work with Ben like that. I had known him a long time before that, and I had sung his songs, and getting to work with him so closely on that was a new experience for me, and very exciting.
And so now you picked the composer, you picked the songs, and then I mean the lyrics, and then how was the process with the uh, back and forth with the composer, the performer?
Yeah, so we really dug deep. The first time I came to him with the idea for the commission, I had all these poems. I was like, "What do you think of this? What do you think of this?" A composer only wants to set the words that speak to them. So we kept digging, and then we found these. I shared these videos with him from the It Gets Better project, and he was like, "These are great. I'm really into this. Let's do that." And then we were really struggling to find the fourth thing. We chose the Harvey Milk Hope speech, and then we were like, we need another voice. We need another point of view. All of the songs are about struggle or finding your way through to better times. You know, the hope speech is all about that, right? Like, it gets better, just keep going, find your people kind of thing. And we were like, you know, it would be nice if we had an experience of coming out represented in which the outcome is positive, right? Not a negative experience. So we kept looking. We couldn't find it. There are poems out there, but they were all like really heavy and not quite the right attitude, not quite the right color. So that's when I very sheepishly said, I have this poem that I wrote. And I was like, it's not, it probably needs some revision. It might need some work, but take a look at this. Let me know what you think about it. And I got an email back and he was like, this is it, Michael. We found it. And it's in your own voice, which I think will be really beautiful. And it was, you know, particularly special because, you know, it was about me coming out to my brother, and my brother was in the audience when I premiered it. So it's pretty great.
Well, that is a very, very
Yeah.
tailored to the artist kind of
Yeah.
song cycle. I mean, because you were not only the performer and the commissioner, but also the librettist in a way, and you didn't
Yeah.
write the whole cycle, but just one part of it. So that's
Yeah, which is actually oddly enough similar to the piece that I performed with Howard, and that you heard me sing for the first time, doing that in your living room. So
right.
we built that piece. John Glover and I built that piece together, where we chose poems, and then we included two of my poems as well on that cycle. So yeah, it's kind of becoming a thing.
Do you write randomly or do you write regularly?
Um, I try to write fairly regularly, but usually when poems come out of me, it's kind of like a fever, right? I feel like I have to get something on the page. Something's been gnawing at me. You know, I have the cycle that John took the two poems to set from uh, was something I wrote. I think I wrote it in a day, and it's 10 poems, and it just like I was going through some stuff, and I finally was at a place where I was really processing it all, and you know, like I felt all these words bubbling up, and so I got my pen and my paper out, and suddenly I had a poetic cycle. So that's typically how those things happen. But you know, individual poems sort of come to me at random, which is also nice. And I'm becoming a librettist right now as well. That's my next step. So I've got 3 libretto projects in the works.
3. Wow.
3, yes.
No, that's huge because those are very time-consuming projects in terms of the
Yeah.
length and the scope and the you know. Well, you tell us, how do you write the libretto? I assume we're talking about an opera or a short kind of opera.
Yeah, I'm writing. They're all chamber pieces, which is exciting. So like it's a it's a bit of an easing into the world of libretto instead of writing grand opera, which you know is a much bigger form. But I feel like that it's the same amount of work in the end, right? Like you're still building and crafting and thinking dramatically, which is a bit new for me, you know, to think in that way, because as a poet you're transcribing emotion, right? You're not necessarily thinking in drama or action. So I'm yeah excited to be able to do that. I've yet to start writing the actual librettos for these projects. I've been working on the outlines of the stories. One is an adaptation of a play, so that one is a little easier, right? We have everything sort of laid out in front of us, and then it's just about how do we organize all of these thoughts and ideas and all of this drama into something that makes sense operatically. So that'll be a different challenge. Um, the second piece that I'm writing is based in history. It's a retelling of a moment in history, and I've had to create a story based off of all of the research that I did about what was going on during that time. So that's been very fascinating. I'm reading about these historic figures in the arts, actually, and then figuring out what their personal lives could have been like in order to make something juicy for for the stage. And then the third one is similar. It's also based on a historic figure, and but it's about a very specific moment in time. Uh, I can talk about it. It's about Shostakovich when Stalin sent him to New York to give a communist propagandist speech at the World Peace Conference at the Waldorf Astoria. So it was a pretty messed up little moment in his life, and sort of a very um, sort of under the microscope moment for him and for Russia and for his music as well. He was such a star here when he arrived. It was almost like the Beatles were coming, you know. So yeah, it's really fascinating. Again, I'm going to have to imagine a story, or the specifics of a story, and some of the sort of drama that surrounded him. So it's a challenge.
Uh, Two things. First of all, yes, writing a poem is one thing, but writing a libretto is another thing. It's because you need to behave like people talk, meaning you
Yeah,
cannot just think. I mean, at
right,
some point you could just think, there will be an aria. What That's what usually arias are. But
right.
essentially, a libretto is a dialogue of someone actually talking, and so you
Hmm.
had to come up with what would I say that give the right information and not superfluous information, information of what I'm doing, how I feel, but without saying it. And
Right.
actually, that evolves the story, and that has the right ups and downs to get to the climax of the. So
Yeah.
how do you lay out all that process?
Well, it's such a distillation of information as well. In opera, you can't it can't be too wordy. The music has to sort of express so much of what happens. I mean, we know this historically, right? We hear it in Mozart, and there's a lot of words in Mozart, but if you really like look at the libretto, you can see that there are things that aren't said that the music does. So I've been thinking a lot about that, how to get this message across, how to get this story across, but not give too much away, and allow for there to be room for the composer to fill in those blanks with their creation. So it's a fascinating process that I've only just begun, and it's exhilarating and terrifying all at once, walking into a new territory. But as an opera singer, I think that to do this work is to have an advantage, because I know what I like to experience in the words, and in the singability of the words themselves. So I'm thinking in that way too. What vowel is going to be good at the climax of this sentence that I've written? What is it going to feel like on the tongue to be able to get everything across? So yeah, there's a lot to consider, and I'm excited to put my stamp on that side of the opera world.
How do you come up with this hat of a librettist?
It kind of just happened, actually. I had this idea pre-pandemic to adapt this play that I love. It was also a movie. I think I'm allowed to talk about it. It's called The House of Yes, Um, and if you remember, it was a Parker Posey vehicle in the mid 90s. It was shortly after the play had premiered and had a life already. And it's a really weird, twisted family drama that centers around this twin brother and sister who have a very strange relationship in which they should I even say it? They play with one another utilizing the assassination of JFK. So it's super weird. It's super fun, oddly fun. It's very funny in a sort of black comedy kind of way. And there's only five characters. It happens in one night in a house, so it's very compact. And so I reached out to my friend Kamala Shankaram and asked her if she was interested, and she was like, I love that play so much. Oh my God, yes, 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 yes. So we started the process pre-pandemic, and then we realized maybe we should take a break until all of this clears out. We had also started the process of getting the rights for the play, which really is a process. Um, and we have returned to it now post pandemic, and we're all contracted and ready to go. So that's um, it's going to be an interesting little moment. And so I really didn't know that I was going to do this, except for this idea that I had, and then it just made sense that I would, write the libretto. I'm co-librettoing actually with my friend Kathy Kelly, no relation, but um, Kathy and I will write it together for that one. And then the next one came out of just a conversation that I had with another composer friend, and I just sort of off the cuff mentioned this idea that I had for an opera, and he was like, "We should make that opera. I really like that." So here we find ourselves.
Kathy Kelly, the conductor.
Yes,
Oh,
yes, exactly.
so
Yeah.
she's also writing the libretto.
Yeah, she's actually written two librettos already. One was with David Hanlon, the composer, and the other one was with Kamala Shankaram, which was a one-woman opera that was premiered digitally during the pandemic. So it was
Oh,
turned into a film.
what 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 was the name of that one?
It was called Interstate.
Oh, I wasn't
Yeah,
aware. Okay,
yeah,
well, big friends with
yeah. Of course.
Kathy. So hi,
Yeah.
Kathy.
Hi, Kathy.
So great. So and then this idea of how do you go? Are you part of the producing of these operas, or just being asked to do the libretto?
So essentially, what we've done is we've pitched our idea to a number of opera companies for the purpose of commissioning and producing. So luckily for me, I just have one responsibility. Although it is sort of like big in the beginning, that pitching process is a lot of work and preparation, and creating an outline that makes sense so that they can really imagine what it is that they would produce. Um, and it has to seem really interesting. So we managed to get interest in what we're creating. So that's the lucky thing.
Being the somehow the force, the energy, the force behind the project, and the librettist, how much, and also singer, how much do you have in this project you a say in terms of the vocal lines and the music writing in terms of how it fits your text for one,
Well, I
and
think. Oh,
your
sorry.
singing and the singing for another one.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting journey. Again, I'm just learning. Obviously, I've done this with my poems and working with the composer to say like, hey, I hear it actually like this line. This is how I would read it, and I'm not sure the way you've said it in the shape that you've said it. I'm not sure it's quite what I had in mind. So then we go back and forth, and we make little changes to it that help to underline what I think should be underlined, what should be brought out in that particular line. So I think that process will probably be rather similar. Um, but it is kind of, once you send off that libretto to the composer, they're getting busy with it and working with it the way they see it. So it really depends on the partnership that you have, that you've established, and the willingness of that composer to work in that kind of way. But I think it is a back and forth to an extent. And then in the end, right, it sort of goes off to the composer, and it's their responsibility. But yeah, sorry, what was your second question, Jorge?
And that's as a librettist, but also as a singer, do you have a saying in it?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think I'll have a particularly unique point of view, right? To be able to say, hey, this doesn't seem like it would be great for the singer. Maybe can you reimagine it like this? Like, this is where I think the higher pitch would best be served in the line, or something like that. I'm speaking hypothetically, of course, but I think, that's my advantage as a singer, to be able to bring that expertise with me in this process in ways that other librettists who aren't singers don't necessarily have, right? They're thinking about it, solely from the sort of literary and expression side. So yeah, that should be interesting too. I hadn't thought about it, but
Right. I mean, it certainly, you. I mean, you can't escape that the fact that you are a singer and you will probably sing how they said your poems, and say,
right,
well, not so you will have a natural attitude toward the a response to the actual vocal line. So I'm sure
yeah,
that will happen.
for sure. Yeah,
Um, and so changing quite a bit of the topic, tell us
yeah,
about yourself. I mean, where are you from originally? Because you say come back from
yeah,
New York, so I mean it could be come back from college, but where are you
yeah.
from originally, and where have you
I,
started music?
I'm from New York. I grew up on Long Island, not far from New York City, just about 30 miles, in a town called Massapequa, a bit of an infamous town. Um,
I have a. I mean, I know it really well because one of my best friends lived there forever.
oh wow.
She eventually moved to Spain and things like that. But we used to live. We used to leave our little dog in Massapequa every summer
Oh my
for
God.
15 years. We go to Massapequa very often. So
That's
I know.
crazy.
I
Like,
don't know and why is it infamous?
well, a very famous crime happened in Massapequa. The Joey Buttafuoco, Amy Fisher shooting happened. I don't know if you remember this. This was like mid 90s. And it was sort of one of the first media circuses that happened in the country, where they were just under constant surveillance and all over the news 24/7. So our town was inundated with this, right? We were all massively affected by what was going on. So it was a wild moment. And we have a lot of mobsters that are from there. The Gaudis have lived there. The Gambinos have lived there. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So for Massapequa, I didn't know that. I mean, again, I know the town, but I didn't know that they had these celebrities there. And then,
Then I was a saxophonist and growing up, and I was also a ballet dancer when I was younger. So I was always in the arts, and then I sort of fell upon singing. My saxophone teacher was like, "Go join the chorus. It'll help you play better." And so I did, and I realized I had a voice I never knew. So I started pursuing that with more vigor. And when I auditioned for conservatories, I auditioned on both saxophone and voice and got in everywhere but one school for both. So I had a decision to make. I realized in the end that I was more interested in being able to tell stories through my art than just playing music alone. So voice won, and I went to Eastman School of Music for my undergrad. And then I got into Juilliard for my master's. So I got to come back to New York. And then straight out of Juilliard, I went to Zurich, Switzerland. I was in the Zurich Opera Studio, their young artist training program. So I did that for a year. And then, whew, this is like a speed version of my history. I moved to Houston, Texas after that because I was singing as a tenor at the time. And I was having some issues with my technique. And I found a teacher in Houston, Texas that I really wanted to work with. And we endeavored down a path that took me to baritone land. So, yeah, I started my career briefly as a tenor and then sort of revamped and started again as a baritone.
When you started in Eastman, were you a tenor or were you singing tenor rap?
I was, yeah.
Oh wow! So you were a tenor for quite a while, and then
Yeah, I
and
sang as a tenor until 2010, and then I switched.
so even through Juilliard and Zurich.
Yeah,
Wow,
yeah, yeah.
that's
It was a crazy experience.
yeah, that's a long time to be in a fact that you were not feeling comfortable.
Yeah, it was a constant struggle, and that's what inevitably made me go, I have to go figure out either why this is a struggle, like maybe there's something missing in my technique that's keeping it from being easier, um, or there's something else that needs to happen, and it turned out it was the something else.
Right? So certainly you're a high baritone. So
Yeah, yeah,
because
kind
yeah,
of.
and so then did you actually move to Houston?
I did, yeah. I was there for almost 2 years. Yeah, it was great. I found myself loving Houston, which I didn't expect. You know, as a New Yorker, I was like, "Am I going to be surrounded by a bunch of cowboys? Like, what is this?" And I get down there, and it's a very cosmopolitan city, and a thriving gay community as well, which I was delighted to discover. So yeah, it became a little haven for me during that moment of confusion, right? Like stopped performing for about a year during that time and was just focusing on identifying, uh, sort of the faults that were happening. So
It's interesting because obviously you were successful in a way as a tenor. If you go into Juilliard and into Zurich, you're an artist which is also very sought after and
yeah,
hard to get. So uh, that's uh, that's a decision. Because one thing is
yeah.
when it's not working and you don't get anywhere, but when you work and um,
Well, I was being offered a lot of work in Europe. I had been offered two fest contracts, contracts to be a company member with an opera company. Um, and Zurich was also grooming me to be a fest singer for them. And I I just kept looking at the repertoire that they were asking me to sing, and it was terrifying me because I didn't know that I could perform it well or survive it. Right, the tessitura of some of these things that they wanted me to do, ugh, I just I knew that it was going to break me, actually, inevitably. So I made a very hard decision. I consider it the most brave thing I've ever done, to turn my back on those opportunities and go address what I felt was going on with me. So and I tried out a bunch of teachers in Europe, hoping that I could just sort of stay there and ride that and fix while I went. But I took one lesson with my teacher in Houston, and I knew that he was going to be my answer. So I changed it all.
Great. Did you come back to Europe after that, or do you stay in the States after
I
Houston?
stayed in the States. I moved back to New York after Houston. So yeah, I was back here sort of rebuilding. I got a, I got management after that. I started touring with the Mark Morris Dance Group as a soloist, not a dancer, as a singer. And yeah, I was performing the Satie Socrate with them, which is a half an hour piece for just one singer. Um, and we did it at mostly Mozart Festival, and we did it all over the country. So I that was sort of my re-entry into the professional singing world. And then I won a bunch of competitions around that time as well, which sort of helped me to launch back into things. So it was a good moment.
And I'm sure very, very reassuring after such a change to say, okay,
Yeah,
so that was the right move to do, which it's as you said, very scary, but very
yeah,
brave, and it's working out.
yeah,
And bring you back now to Savannah and Brigadoon. So how was your?
yeah.
I mean, since you do a bit of everything, and so you are like you should be our poster child, because in Savannah Voice Festival we say opera, musical theater, and song, and you
Yeah.
certainly do that, and new opera as traditional. How is your relationship with Brigadoon?
Well, this is the first time I'll be performing it. I'm really excited because it's rarely done or not done enough, in my opinion. I think it's one of the more delightful shows in the canon, particularly from that era. I just find it so endearing and so lovely, and there's it's hard to say. There's so much light in the show. Um, and fantasy and love, and I'm just so excited to get to play this character. I've loved it, and I've loved the movie, of course, as well. It's one of the great movies. Um, and I'm not related to Gene Kelly, but I'm very delighted that we have the same last name, and I get to sort of play the same role that he played. Um,
Yeah, we should say that Kelly's coming to Savannah to do Brigadoon.
Oh yeah, that's a good advertisement right there.
Yeah, yeah, it's quite a beautiful piece, and it has this idea of magic and realism, and how would say the idea of commitment and
Yeah.
decision, and I mean it's an unusual premise, but I think it's the characters and the lovely human beings being put in an unusual, a bit magical and surreal
Yeah, it's almost
reality.
like science fiction, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's got this weird thing about it, right? This town that wakes up every day, and it's 100 years later for 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 us, right? But for them it feels like it's only a day. And I can't even imagine if you did that, and then some person from the present, our present, waltzes into the town, how strange that must have been. And yet in the play, in the musical, it's as though they expect it. They're a little taken back, but they're also like, we know what we are. We know what our situation is. And so here you are, and let's see.
yeah,
Right?
and obviously the I mean many conflicts, but the big conflict is that the fact that if Tommy decides to go with Fiona, then he has to risk in fact de facto, but in a way feels like risk leaving everything else behind.
That's right.
Um,
Yeah.
Actually, and I'm going to get very personal. In a way, it's a bit of the fear of the coming out.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
also,
Yeah.
I was thinking to you, changing from tenor to baritone, because
Yeah.
there's a feel of, I just thought it was, wow, it's just like, because that's, I mean, I don't know if people would understand how serious that change is. It's essentially, it's more than changing from saxophone
Yeah.
to singer, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of involvement in singing. Um, so I think that was very brave of you to do the change, and I think it will inform Tommy beautifully in terms of
Yes.
how you
Yeah.
make decision.
I'm very excited to bring all of that to him, right? Yeah, and it is a brave moment, right? Like to give everything up to walk into a new world. Right? For him, it's so new for Tommy, and yes, I think that's true, right? To come out is entering a new world, right? You don't know what's on the other side of that decision, and yet you feel like you have to make it. You have no choice. So
It
yeah,
feels like, um, I mean, it feels that way before. Of course, after the changes is not that, but it could be. I mean, you risk that you risk rejection from everyone. In which
that's
case,
right.
I mean, at least now the process is much more. I think it's because it's more mainstream and it's more accepted. It's more talked after, and we are making strides in accepting it in a different way. But certainly, in a way, it still feels sometimes like you could lose everything. So in a way, that is what
It's Tommy's
sort of,
story.
yeah. And so we're very very happy to have you and be our star for Brigadoon and feature Cheryl Mills Prize from the ATC and have a great recitalist and like a librettist in our so I'm sure that we'll do a lot of other things in the future with our festival.
Well, thank you, Jorge. I can't wait to be down there with you all as well. I think it's going to be a beautiful experience. And
Yes.
thank you for asking me to do it. I'm thrilled.
Thank you. And we're about wrapping up now. So, any parting words to our crowd in Savannah?
Oh, yeah, come curious, come open, and yeah, be ready for the beauty of this piece. And yeah, that's it.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Michael, for being with us, and thank you everyone for watching and hearing and listening. This is going to be also a podcast later, so we are very happy to have you, and we are looking forward to work together and show you the city around because
Yes.
we are very proud of Savannah.
Well, it's beautiful. I can't wait to be there.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And everyone, I will see you all next Friday when we talk to another of our voices of the festival. Thank you and see you next
Thanks,
week.
Jorge.
Thank you,
Bye.
Mike. Bye.